Hello, my name is Megan Landry. This is my honors thesis on voice pitch modulation in men and women in response to perceived social context. So before we start, we have to understand that humans are, by nature, a social species. And because of this, we have learned how to make snap judgments about others and their intentions towards us based on what little information is available to us in the moment. For example, this could be face shape, body size, or voice characteristics. Researchers have found that these social judgments that we make can be sorted into two broad summary categories. Those are judgments of warmth, which encompass trustworthiness, affiliation, attractiveness, and judgments of dominance, which encompasses judgments of strength, skill, and formidability. Now, these dichotomous judgments help to inform our approach avoidance tendencies. Now, voice pitch in particular, which is the rate at which our vocal cords vibrate when producing speech or other sounds, plays a really important role in perceptions of traits like dominance, trustworthiness, attractiveness, and more. Importantly, humans have the ability to modulate their voice pitch in order to be perceived in different ways. Researchers have found that people tend to lower their pitch when attempting to sound more dominant and raise their pitch when attempting to sound warmer. That being said, some researchers have also found that male and female speakers tend to react differently to warmth and dominance cues and modulate their pitch differently in response. These differences may be due to the sexually dimorphic biological qualities of pitch, which result in women's voices being approximately twice as high as men's are. But others have also suggested that these differences are due to cultural or gendered learning, which emphasizes dominance qualities more so in men and emphasizes warmth qualities more so in women. However, not much research has been done on these gender differences, so knowledge on this topic is fairly limited and inconsistent. But because of all of this, I hypothesized first that participants would differentially modulate their pitch, the pitch of their voices in response to perceived social context, in that their mean vocal pitch would be higher when responding to warmth-coded situations and lower when responding to dominance-coded situations. I also hypothesized that male and female participants would respond differently to social cues. I predicted that male participants would be more sensitive to dominance-coded situational cues and modulate their pitch more in response to them compared to warmth situations. And on the other hand, that female participants would be more sensitive to warmth-coded cues and therefore modulate their pitch more in response to them compared to dominance cues. To test this, a group of 75 participants between the ages of 18 and 78 were recruited. Within the sample, 20 participants identified as male and 48 identified as female. All participants were fluent in English, both reading and speaking. As per my exclusion criteria, participants who identified as non-binary or gender non-conforming or who indicated that they had a speech impediment were excluded from the analysis. This study used 3 different types of recording materials: a practice recording, a baseline recording, and an experimental recording. The practice materials were included to help participants get used to the recording software, which was Mote, a free Google Chrome add-on, and these materials were not analyzed. The baseline recording was used to measure participants' average pitch. And then finally, the experimental recording tasks were 6 short conversational phrases, each one corresponding to 2 separate scenarios, 1 warmth and 1 dominance. Every participant only read each phrase 1 time and only saw 1 of the 2 scenarios. A pilot study was conducted on these materials to make sure that the 12 scenarios did in fact inspire the relevant characteristics. A small independent sample was recruited and asked to read each scenario and associated phrase, and then rate how dominant and warm the speaker sounded. The manipulation of situational context was found to be successful for 7 of these 12 scenarios, but was not significant for the remaining 5. Regardless of this, all 12 scenarios were used in the recording task. Next, in order to analyze the data, each recording was replaced with the mean fundamental frequency or average pitch in hertz from each recording. This was done using VoiceLab, which is a free open source automated acoustic analysis software. A two-way mixed ANOVA comparing situational context and participant gender was conducted and found no significant effects of gender, context, and no significant interaction between the two. However, a second ANOVA was performed using the same design, but excluding the recordings from the 5 scenarios that were found to be not significant during the pilot study. And this second ANOVA actually found a medium significant effect of context, wherein recordings from dominance-coded scenarios had greater pitch modulation than did recordings from warmth-coded scenarios, but found no significant effects of gender. But there was a medium significant interaction between situational context and gender. So in conclusion, what we can learn from this is that perceived warmth and dominance context did indeed have a significant effect on voice pitch, in that participants differentially modulated their pitch in response to these contexts, which was in line with findings from previous research and also confirms hypothesis 1. As predicted, participants did lower their pitch when responding to dominance-coded scenarios. However, contrary to what was expected, on average, they tended to also lower their pitch when responding to warmth-coded scenarios, but less so than in dominant scenarios. More than that, male and female participants did differentially modulate their pitch, with female participants modulating their pitch more so than male participants did. While this effect was small and not significant, this trend was in line with hypothesis 2, but in the opposite direction than was expected. Finally, future research should focus on more clearly defining these gender differences in pitch modulation in response to perceived social contexts. And more than that, it should also look at whether trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals may respond any differently to these cues than do cisgender people. And finally, more research also needs to be done to more clearly define the interaction between warmth cues and voice pitch. Thank you so much for listening. Here are my references.